The triangle has haunted this ranch for years, and in Season 7 Episode 8 titled Rocket Men, the team finally takes the fight upward. And this episode guide breaks down how Skinwalker Ranch's researchers launched instrument-loaded rockets directly into the heart of the bubble and the blob to chase answers no one else has gotten close to, 4 seasons now. And viewers have watched the team chase ground-level anomalies, dig into underground tunnels, and chase strange lights across the property, but there's always been a piece of the puzzle that stayed frustratingly out of reach: the sky itself. And the airspace above the triangle has produced some of the most baffling sensor readings in the show's history, readings that hint at something physically present up there, something dense enough, energetic enough, or strange enough to register on multiple instruments at once. And yet, every time the team tries to study it from the ground, they're left guessing at what's actually happening hundreds or thousands of feet above their heads. Episode 8 changes that approach completely, and it does so in the most direct way possible, by sending hardware straight into the anomaly. Let's start with the setup. And the team has spent considerable time mapping out the boundaries of what they've nicknamed the bubble and the blob, two related but distinct atmospheric phenomena that seem to hover with unusual persistence over the triangle. And these aren't just vague feelings or unconfirmed sightings. Multiple sensor sweeps, drone passes, and ground-based instruments have picked up readings consistent with something occupying that airspace on a semi-regular basis. The problem has always been resolution. And ground sensors can detect that something is happening up there, but they can't tell the team much about what that something actually is. Is it a pocket of unusual atmospheric density, some kind of electromagnetic disturbance, and a localized weather anomaly that just happens to recur in the same spot over and over again? Without getting an instrument physically into that space, the team has been stuck working with secondhand data, inference, and educated guesswork. It's worth pausing here to appreciate just how long this particular mystery has lingered in the background of the show. Earlier seasons gave viewers glimpses of strange readings near this stretch of sky, brief sensor spikes that would appear and vanish before the team could fully investigate. Drones sent into the area sometimes returned with corrupted footage or instrument malfunctions that nobody could fully explain. And ground crews occasionally reported a strange heaviness in the air, a sense that something was different about that particular patch of sky compared to the rest of the property. None of it ever added up to a clean explanation, and over time, the bubble and the blob became something of a running thread in the investigation, acknowledged but never fully confronted. This episode is the moment the team decides that indirect observation isn't enough anymore. That's where the rockets come in. And rather than relying solely on drones, which have altitude limitations and can struggle in turbulent or electromagnetically unusual conditions, the team brings in specialized rockets rigged with scientific payloads. These aren't toys. And each rocket is built to carry a suite of instruments designed to capture real-time data as it passes through the target zone. Things like radiation levels, magnetic field fluctuations, temperature shifts, and atmospheric pressure changes. And the idea is straightforward in concept but genuinely difficult in execution. Launch the rocket on a trajectory that takes it directly through the heart of the bubble or the blob, and capture whatever data the instruments can grab during that brief window of exposure. The logistics behind this kind of operation shouldn't be underestimated. Building a rocket capable of reaching the necessary altitude while carrying a meaningful sensor payload requires careful engineering. Too heavy, and the rocket won't reach the target zone with enough velocity or stability. Too light on instrumentation, and the data collected won't be detailed enough to draw meaningful conclusions. The team has to strike a balance between payload capacity and flight performance, all while accounting for the unpredictable nature of whatever they're flying into. And there's also the matter of recovery. A rocket that successfully passes through the anomaly is only useful if the data can actually be retrieved afterward, which means parachute systems, tracking equipment, and a recovery plan all have to be worked out in advance. Before the first launch, there's a palpable mix of excitement and tension among the team. This is new territory, even for a show that's spent years pushing the boundaries of what they're willing to try. Rockets introduce real risk, both logistical and physical. And there's the challenge of precision targeting, making sure the trajectory actually intersects with the anomaly rather than missing it by a wide margin. There's the challenge of payload survivability. And since whatever conditions exist inside the bubble or the blob might affect the instruments in unpredictable ways, And there's the simple unknown of what happens when you send something man-made directly into a phenomenon that has resisted explanation for this long. And team discussions in the lead-up to the launch reveal just how seriously everyone is taking this attempt. There's careful talk about wind conditions, launch angles, and the precise coordinates where previous sensor readings have been strongest. And some team members express genuine uncertainty about what kind of data they might actually get back, while others lean into cautious optimism that this approach could finally crack something that's eluded them for years. And that tension between scientific caution and barely contained excitement gives the build-up real weight, and it's clear the stakes feel different this time compared to some of the show's more routine investigative segments. And the first launch sequence is handled with the kind of methodical care the show has built its reputation on. The team isn't rushing this. They've clearly put significant thought into trajectory calculations, instrument calibration, and safety protocols before a single rocket leaves the ground. When the countdown finally hits 0 and the rocket fires off into the sky toward the triangle, there's a noticeable shift in energy across the team. This is the moment they've been building toward, not just for this episode, but arguably for several seasons of circling around the mystery of what's actually happening in that airspace. As the rocket climbs and approaches the target zone, the tension in the control area ratchets up, and everyone is watching the telemetry, waiting to see if the instruments register anything as the rocket passes through the coordinates where the bubble or the blob has been previously detected. And then it happens. The data starts coming back, and it's not subtle. And the instruments pick up readings that immediately stand out from baseline atmospheric conditions, the kind of spike that tells the team they didn't just fly through empty sky. Something was there, and the rocket caught it in the act. What follows is a careful breakdown of exactly what the instruments recorded. Without giving away every specific number, the readings point toward a real physical anomaly occupying that airspace, not some illusion of sensor error or atmospheric noise. And the data suggests a localized disturbance with measurable properties, something that behaves consistently enough to be studied, but strangely enough to explain why it's eluded a clear explanation for so long. And this is the moment the episode title starts to make sense. The team isn't just launching rockets for the sake of spectacle, they're using them scientific probes, and the probes are delivering results. And what's particularly striking about this first round of data is how it forces the team to reconsider some of their earlier assumptions. For years, theories about the bubble and the blob ranged from mundane explanations involving weather patterns to far more speculative ideas involving energy fields or unknown forces tied to the ranch's broader reputation. The rocket data doesn't immediately settle the debate, but it does narrow the range of plausible explanations considerably. Whatever is happening up there has a physical signature that instruments can detect and measure, which rules out some of the more dismissive theories that the anomaly might simply be a trick of perception or an artifact of faulty equipment. Naturally, one successful pass isn't enough to draw firm conclusions, so the team moves into a second phase of testing. And they look at adjusting trajectories, refining instrument placement, and trying to capture a more complete picture of the anomaly's boundaries and behavior. Each subsequent launch adds another layer of data, another piece of the puzzle. And the team's excitement builds as patterns start to emerge in the readings. Patterns that suggest the bubble and the blob might not be two completely separate phenomena, but rather different manifestations of the same underlying atmospheric anomaly, observed at different points in its cycle or under different conditions. This second phase also gives the team an opportunity to test consistency. A single successful reading could theoretically be dismissed as a fluke, a one-time sensor glitch that happened to coincide with the rocket's flight path. But as launch after launch returns similar patterns of disturbance in roughly the same coordinates, the case for a persistent, real phenomenon grows much stronger. And the team starts comparing notes across different launches, looking for overlaps and discrepancies, trying to build out a rough three-dimensional picture of where exactly this anomaly sits in the sky, how large it is, and whether its intensity changes over time or with environmental conditions like temperature and wind. This is where the episode starts to deliver real payoff for longtime viewers. For years, and the show has treated these aerial mysteries as background noise to the more dramatic ground-level events, the strange lights, the cattle mutilations, the underground discoveries. But Rocket Men repositions the airspace above the triangle as potentially central to understanding everything else that happens on the ranch. If there's a persistent atmospheric anomaly hovering over this specific location, Arden, one with measurable physical properties, it raises an entirely new set of questions about how that anomaly might relate to everything else the team has documented over the years. The team doesn't waste time speculating wildly though, true to the show's format, and they ground their excitement in the data itself, walking through what the instruments actually captured and what it might mean. There's discussion about whether the readings align with any known atmospheric or geological phenomena, whether existing scientific explanations can account for what they're seeing. The answer, as is often the case with this show, is a mix of partial explanation and lingering mystery. Some of the data might align loosely with known atmospheric quirks, but the consistency and intensity of the readings, combined with the specific location, leave the team convinced there's still something here that conventional science hasn't fully accounted for. And one of the more striking moments in the episode comes when the team starts cross-referencing the rocket data with previous ground-based observations. Suddenly, incidents that seemed isolated or unconnected start to form a clearer pattern. Strange equipment malfunctions reported near the triangle, odd electromagnetic readings from ground sensors, even some of the visual anomalies witnesses have described over the years. They all start to make a bit more sense when viewed through the lens of a persistent physically real disturbance occupying that airspace. It's not a complete unifying theory, the show is careful not to overpromise that kind of resolution, but it's a significant step toward connecting dots that have remained stubbornly separate for a long time. This cross-referencing exercise becomes one of the more compelling segments of the episode, largely because it reframes years of earlier footage and earlier incidents in a new light. Viewers who followed the show closely will likely find themselves mentally revisiting older episodes, wondering whether previous unexplained equipment failures or strange visual phenomena near that part of the property might now have a more grounded, if still mysterious, explanation. The show doesn't force this connection too hard, but it plants the idea clearly enough that it's hard not to start drawing those lines yourself as a viewer. As the episode moves toward its later stages, the team takes time to reflect on what this breakthrough means for the broader investigation. There's a sense of accomplishment, clearly, after years of indirect observation finally giving way to direct physical evidence. But there's also an acknowledgement that this discovery opens up more questions than it closes. And if the bubble and the blob really are linked manifestations of the same anomaly, what's causing it? Is it something geological, something atmospheric, something tied to whatever else is happening beneath the surface of the ranch? And the team doesn't pretend to have all the answers, and that restraint is part of what makes the episode feel credible rather than sensationalized. There's also a practical dimension to this breakthrough that the episode touches on. Now that the team has a method for directly probing this airspace, future investigations don't have to rely solely on ground-based guesswork. The rocket approach gives them a repeatable tool, a way to gather direct data whenever the bubble or the blob reappears. This sets up an obvious narrative thread for future episodes. Now that they know how to physically reach into the anomaly, what else might they find if they keep probing it under different conditions, different times of day, different seasons? And the episode also spends some time on the human side of this achievement, the visible relief and satisfaction among team members who've spent years chasing this particular thread without much to show for it. And there's a noticeable shift in tone during the post-launch discussions, less of the cautious skepticism that's often characterized earlier theories about the triangle, and more of a grounded confidence that comes from actually holding hard data in hand. And that shift matters for the show's broader arc, since it signals a team that's moving from speculation towards something closer to genuine scientific progress. By the time the episode wraps up, Rocketman has accomplished something the show doesn't always manage in a single hour. It delivers a genuine, data-backed breakthrough, while still preserving the sense of mystery that keeps viewers coming back. The team didn't solve the entire puzzle of Skinwalker Ranch in this episode, and they wouldn't claim to, but they took one of the most persistent, frustrating aerial anomalies on the property and, for the first time, got a direct physical reading from inside it. That's a meaningful shift from years of indirect observation to something far closer to hard evidence. For fans who've followed this show through years of slow-building mysteries, this episode represents a genuine turning point. And the combination of bold experimental design, careful scientific methodology, and a payoff that actually delivers real data makes Rocket Men stand out as one of the more substantial episodes in recent memory. It's not just about the spectacle of watching rockets launch toward a notorious patch of sky, though that alone makes for compelling television. It's about what those rockets brought back, and what that data might mean for understanding everything else that's happened at this ranch over the years. As we close out this breakdown of Season 7, Episode 8, the lingering question is obvious. Now that the team has cracked open a direct line into the Triangle's airspace, where do they go from here? Will future episodes build on this rocket-based approach to map out the anomaly in even greater detail? Will the connections between the bubble, the blob, and the ranch's other unexplained phenomena become clearer? Or will new data only deepen the mystery? Whatever comes next, Rocket Men has given both the team and the audience a genuine reason to believe they're closer than ever to understanding what's really happening above Skinwalker Ranch.